recently asked to go through my list of cult things and talk about Microsoft. Let's do it. I'm Daniella, scholar of cults, extreme groups, and extremely bad leadership. I was also Captain Mestinek in the U.S. Army after growing up in one of the world's most extreme cults, the Children of God. In between that, I was also college valedictorian. And after that, I worked at Microsoft. I went straight from the Army to Microsoft. So I was there 2015, 2016, 2017. And wowza, there's a lot culty about it. Way less culty than the Army, though. Let's just start there, and you can read my book about that, autographed copies at the QR code, or... Okay, so Microsoft, charismatic leader, right? Obviously, there is always one at the top. In any organization, this can always be the CEO. People misunderstand charismatic authority. Charismatic authority was coined by Max Weber as he was trying to secularize the concept of being anointed by God with certain qualities that then everyone agrees that you're the leader. So charismatic authority has nothing to do with being charming. It simply is because of certain qualities about you, we agree that you are our leader. So any household that does that umbrella stuff where the man is the head of the household, that man is a charismatic leader, whether he is charismatic or not. Okay, so charismatic leader, you definitely always have one at the top of Microsoft. You had Bill Gates. Then when I came in, Satya Nadella had just taken over about a year or two before. And I was like, whoa, culty, walking around and people have Satya Nadella quotes pinned to their desks. They're always talking about him. And I was like, geez. And people are like, still way less culty than Steve Ballmer. Okay, so charismatic leader, you have skinny white woman. Oh my God, Amy Hill, I think her name was at the top there. This woman who declared that all interviews will have women in them. And so they just interview you and you can't go on your summer vacation because that's when all the new jobs are up for hire. And then they just hire the same old white retired Army first sergeant anyway. Okay. So you've got the charismatic leader, you've got the sacred assumption. And the sacred assumption at Microsoft is that Microsoft products are the best. It was actually funny when I started working at Microsoft. First of all, my boss, who was a veteran who hired me, was like, you got really lucky that I'm the one that saw your resume because other people wouldn't have hired you because you applied with a Gmail address. And that's a competitor. When I was hired also, you would get $75 to pay for your Windows phone for you to use for work. Most of us at that point just said, screw it, I don't care about getting my cell phone paid for, and kept our iPhones. Satya Nadella finally was like, this is silly. We own 2% of the phone market. We are not competing in the phone market. We're going to do what we always do and compete with subscription services, right? So that was when sometime in 2016 or 2017, all of the Windows products became available on iPhones, for example. Before that, they were not. And so that was really smart. But again, sacred assumption, our products are the best. Okay, transcendent mission. We are going to change the world with our products, right? We're going to, part of this whole entrepreneurship concept of everything we do is changing the world. And then you have the self-sacrifice in favor of it. If we're doing something nobody else is doing, then we have to work harder than other people are working. You've got the isolation. This is my favorite one because when you are on a campus, you are isolated. You are with a large number of like-situated individuals held separate from the world, which is the definition of isolation for the purposes of a total institution. And there's a great book called Corporate Cults that I can't find to flash in front of you in all of my stacks of books that I'm drowning in. And it talks about this, how like all of these great companies to work for, all these big tech companies are trying to be cults. Same when you're isolated on a university campus. If you're isolated in an elementary school building all day with children, that counts as isolation from the world. And they're trying to do this. And these big giant tech companies are giving you, it's interesting that they give you everything but childcare, right? But like they are trying to make it so that you spend all of your third space time with them instead of out in your community. distinguishable vernacular, obviously. Like, you have to learn the language when you get there. And now people are like, well, every vocation or like job, whatever, has its own terms. Yes, kind of. But if you need a translator to sit in the meeting with you, then there's a distinguishable vernacular. This isn't necessarily something that is bad, but it's something that gets us into step 7, us versus them mentality, very easily. Now on Microsoft, you have us, softies, whatever, versus the rest of the world. You also have FTEs, full-time employees, versus, I don't even remember what they called. They called this the V dash, because I was a contractor, and so what? My husband wants to remind me that people at Amazon called it V trash. Amazon would be like, we don't treat contractors like that here. There was one time that we were showing up in office, because most people work from home a lot, and everyone's supposed to be in the office to watch some broadcast by like the chief security officer of Microsoft or something. We were the physical security department. And they had literally 2 different rooms, one for the vendors and one for the FTEs. And of course, the FTE one had catering and the other one did not. And I was like, this is just bonkers. This is so bonkers. That was close to when I left. So you have us versus them. You have exploitation of labor. This always ties into the self-sacrifice. And this is a huge thing in tech companies and startups of any kind. And in fact, Microsoft runs its business like a bunch of little tiny startups. And what do startups do? Exploit labor. You are just expected to work 60, 70, 80 hours a week. This is, I always say, like exploitation of labor is in almost all the groups, right? Like the Department of Defense would shut down in an hour if they had to start paying overtime, as would most corporations in America. And almost every nonprofit and every religion, you can find thousands and thousands and thousands of volunteer hours every year. And I always like to say there's a reason that corporations aren't allowed to accept volunteer labor, because we really understand how exploitation of labor is tied to coercive control. Nevertheless, they get their labor anyways. This is also funny to me when people say like, oh, well, money doesn't matter because these engineers keep leaving. It's not that money doesn't matter. It's that throwing $300,000 at people is not going to get them to give you more than they are willing to give, or more than a human being can consistently give for a long time. Amazon is one of the worst. Amazon out there, both Microsoft and Amazon are out in Seattle, and they're just like, you come here, nobody lasts longer than 2 or 3 years, you burn out, and then it's your halo job and you can go work wherever you want. They love hiring veterans because they know they can work a veteran to death and they will rarely complain. So exploitation of labor, you have high entrance costs, high exit costs. Obviously, it's very, very difficult to get hired as a full-time employee at Microsoft. High entrance costs become a huge part of high exit costs. At any of these tech companies, you are going to have the golden handcuffs. I hated my job, but it was really, really hard to quit a job that was paying you 6 figures. Like, you actually tell yourself all the time, like, I should be able to just hang by my thumbs for this salary. So the high exit costs are definitely there. Definitely. I talked to almost nobody at Microsoft once I left, right? That isolation becomes part of shunning. It's not hard and strict like real cults, right? But there's definitely a big element of shunning, similar to the military. Like when you leave, you're just gone. And because all of the people there live and work in isolation from the rest of the world, you're just gone. When you're not there, you're just gone. And then finally, us versus them mentality. I think we see this every time we see organizations apologizing for some big scandal, instead of just standing behind the individuals that were hurt and saying, yeah, this bad apple is terrible. We are getting rid of them. And we are also investigating to see how they got in here in the first place. Our tree, it's not just our apple that is rotten. Our tree is rotten, and we're going to go find out where the toxins came from. We never see organizations doing that. So that's my quick little run through of how Microsoft can hit 10 out of 10 of the definition of cult. It can certainly be an extremely toxic place to work. And if you have more examples, I would love to hear them. I'm actually working on a book called The Culting of America, and this is what I'm doing. I'm breaking breaking out this 10-part list of cults. I'm showing you where we find these things in real cults, where we see them in the military, and then where we find them in organizations around us.